excited to be here with you this morning, and I was reflecting that this is actually really great because I think this is the first conference, energy conference, that I've spoken at where when I start talking about branding and marketing, people don't look at me like I have a second head. So really glad to be in a group of people who appreciate this. So what I'm going to share with you is some of the results that we're seeing from a very large consumer research program in the United States. So that's my caveat, that the perspective is North American, but I think there are some things that all of us can learn regardless of what market we're in. So as a research program, we've got a methodology. We have a model too, and I'll pause a little bit longer on this slide just to say that brand trust is one of three things that compose what we call our engaged customer relationship. So the other two are operational satisfaction and product experience. So we've touched on all of these already during the conference. So what I'm going to do first is share a little bit about the benefits of brand trust that we're seeing in the US. And perhaps not surprisingly, when customers rate their brand trust of their utility higher, they tend to score higher on the Engaged Customer Relationship Index. So if you're looking for engaged customers, a strong brand is a good place to start. We also see that customers who rate their utility higher on brand trust are more likely to make positive comments about their utility. And I think Nick touched on it this morning, the age of distraction. Customers are much more likely to listen to one another than they are to listen to the utility or even hear the utility message. So this idea of customers making positive comments about their utility is really what we call a multiplier. It's a great way to build and continue building brand. In the US, operational satisfaction is a really core component of how utilities measure themselves, both internally and oftentimes from a regulatory perspective. And we see overall that the industry is scoring 763 on a 1,000-point scale, which is pretty good. And when a utility achieves operational satisfaction with a customer, which we define as the customer's not had an outage, they've not heard of an outage, they've not had or heard of a safety experience, and they have not heard of a rate increase, they see about a 6-point bump on that index. So not nothing, but not great. When you see customers who rate themselves as having above average brand trust, we see a 51-point jump in operational satisfaction index. So I'm not going to claim that creating high brand trust is free. You all know that's not. But it is potentially much less expensive to achieve a high level of brand trust with your customers than it is to achieve what we call operational excellence. So if you're looking at where to invest your money to achieve satisfaction, brand is a great place to do that. Not surprisingly, we also see that customers are much more likely to adopt value-added products and services when they have high brand trust in their utility. You get a nice bump, about double the number of customers who are taking advantage of enhanced service support, things like online chat and social media, and consumption management programs when you have high brand trust. And you also see incremental usage with online self-service kinds of offerings and billing and payment offerings. Now in the US, most customers are in a monopoly market. That is, they don't have the opportunity to choose their utility provider, although we are seeing a number of customers in places where renewables, particularly solar, have become a lot less expensive, investing in things like solar and energy efficiency to reduce the demand that they have for the utility's product. And so the substitution effect is having a difference for a lot of utilities. It's a subject of intense conversation. We look at high brand trust and its impact. The blue line shows customers' stated likelihood to switch utility providers if they had the choice. And you see it declines precipitously when you have high brand trust. The gray line is the percentage of bill savings customers say they would need to have in order to switch providers. You see that climb. So as you get to that top 3 box in brand trust, your customers are much, much more sticky, which is important if you're certainly in a competitive market. Even if you're not in a competitive market where there's a substitution threat, this is really critical. So I'm going to talk a little bit next about how you generate brand trust. These are the factors that go into our brand trust score, and there are two of these factors that we see most highly correlated with all of the other factors. For those of you data geeks, it's an R-squared of about 0.87 between these two factors and everything else here. So the first is company reputation and advocacy. So that's the perception that you're a well-managed company, that there's good word of mouth about your company. The second is communications effectiveness, which basically boils down to, are you talking to me about things I care about in the way in which I care about them? So I'll turn now to a couple of examples of how utilities in the US have used this model to increase their scoring. The first is Entergy, which is an investor-owned utility in the southeastern part of the US. It serves about 12 million customers. And they have a very strong focus on philanthropy, both employee volunteerism and corporate giving. They engage in the communities in which they do business. They talk about their engagement. And this is one of the reasons that they're one of 4 utilities to be listed on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. And what we see in terms of their scoring is that on the company reputation and advocacy, the industry grew about 9 points between last year and this year. Entergy saw about 6 times that growth between 2015 and 2016, in part due to their strong focus on philanthropy. Now, they also have a number of customers in their service territory that are low income, higher than many US utilities. And they realized that the way that they were interacting with these low-income customers was causing problems not just for the customers, but also for the company. So for example, low-income customers were much more likely to be calling the call center multiple times to deal with billing issues, payment arrangements, things like that. So incredibly expensive to serve. And so they took the approach that the opponents are not the people, it's poverty. And they undertook a multi-year initiative, they're still in the process of this, of really understanding how their policies and how the way they relate with their low-income customers impacted both the customers and the business. And so they've started recommending or implementing some of the recommendations out of this effort. And they've seen a fairly strong increase in their community support index where this kind of thing is reflected. Again, the industry grew about 9 points between last year and this year in our research. Entergy saw about a 7 times increase, in large part due to this effort. So really understanding your customers. Entergy, by the way, was one of our largest gainers between last year and this year in terms of their overall brand trust. So these are just a couple of examples where they've performed particularly strongly and how they've done that. I'm going to turn next to the northwestern part of the US, Seattle City Light. It's a municipally owned utility serving the greater Seattle area, about 423,000 customers. Now in 2015, their then CEO was besieged by a lot of high-profile PR issues. I won't get into the details, but they recently replaced their CEO, confirming the new CEO in March of this year. And what we saw in our research was an almost immediate bump in the management quality rating when the new CEO came in. So the quality of management can be really critical to customer perception and brand trust. Now, one of the things this new CEO, Larry Weiss, did was he undertook an effort to define the brand and create a brand standards book for how Seattle City Light would communicate to their customers, mostly around look and feel. And so on the left, you see their e-newsletter from 2015, and the right is 2016. Not a world of change, but a little bit cleaner, a little bit simpler to read. And you'll see that it's also much more consistent with the website, which is also cleaner. This is a 2015 and the 2016 Seattle City Light websites. So again, more consistency in terms of how they communicate. And what we see with Seattle City Light is that they achieved a 5 times growth over the industry between 2015 and 2016 on their communications effectiveness index. So those brand standards, fairly simple idea when implemented consistently, can have a very strong impact on how your customers perceive how you communicate with them. So I think I'm getting the hook over here, but that does wrap up my conversation. Looking forward to the panel. Thank you.